Recording.
Happy Sunday. Let's find a seat. Comfy, stable, base position. And we'll settle in there. Nice to see you guys. Setting the spine so that it can be at ease and can be vertical. Maybe we let the eyes close here. Think about where the awareness drifts, and maybe consciously align that awareness to something that will be advantageous, whether that's physical or beyond. And let's just settle into a nice fluid breath so we can find some space to practice within. We'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds here. Taking one last big full breath, feeling the lung capacity expand, feeling that physical checkpoint, and then we'll release back into our breath, maintaining that alignment at center and let the eyes drift open if they are closed. Let's take both of our hands and just make fists and do 90-degree bends at the elbows so we can just roll out the wrists a little bit. Think about really finding that area of rotation that's the most difficult. So if we have sticky points or have spots that the wrist really wants to avoid, try to go into those. So we get this full capacity for rotation. And then we'll reverse that. Sometimes when you're going into this really full movement, it can tense that musculature more than you would expect for non-weight bearing movement. And then eventually we'll relax. Let's take our right hand over to our left and just capture the forefingers with the palm and press that back. You can extend that arm to get more forearm action, but if you're feeling enough with that elbow bent, you're welcome to keep that bent. The more you extend, the more that slack within that chain of musculature is shortened or removed. And then we'll relax and we'll head to that second side. So left hand comes over to those right forefingers again, just capturing with the palm. And we'll start to bring those back into extension, and you can extend that arm as well if it's advantageous, if it feels like it's creating space. Eventually, there'll be a moment when you feel like you're balanced left to right, and we can release. Just take the fingers and splay them out as wide as we can and push both arms forward. So you're pressing forward. Make sure that we're not rounding, we're not pulling that humeral head out of the socket. So stay engaged as we Gonna press up against what might be an imaginary wall. And then we'll relax. And we're just gonna let the hands stay kind of splayed, but let the tops of the hands roll to the thighs. You can just press down here. The amount of pressure you create, completely up to you. Looking for a little of this top forearm musculature capture. Musculature that does not get a lot of attention from us, but does a lot of work for us. Last 5 seconds here. We'll relax. Just move the fingers a little bit, try to get this reinvigoration of that forearm musculature. And then let's transition to hands and knees tabletop. Setting your tabletop base, you may have some additional feedback from the forearms here. That's wonderful. We can use that feedback to help set our base. Flip the tops of the feet, and let's just exhale back into child's pose. Land at the end of your exhale, and then we'll reverse inhale and pull forward to tabletop. Land at the top of your inhale and think about neutral spine, and then we'll exhale and sink back into child's pose. And let's just use the transition between the breath to create transition between movement. Inhales pull us forward to a neutral spine. Exhales sink us back into that landing of child's pose. And we'll just continue the linkage of movement and breath through out these two base positions, child's pose and tabletop. The next time that you sink back into child's pose, let's pause there and cycle our breath through this shape. Think about the full expression of your respiration so that in this compacted shape, we feel the full capacity of our inhale. We feel the full fullness of our lungs, and the full capacity of our exhale, the full emptiness of our lungs. We'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds here just to experience full inhale, full exhale. When it feels appropriate, we'll pull ourselves to hands and knees tabletop. And let's take our left knee and just bring that out towards the width of the mat so that we're a little bit wider on the left side. Right side should be relatively hip-shoulder aligned. And then we're going to sink back into an asymmetrical version of child's pose. Inhale, pull yourself forward. Exhale, sink back. Inhale, pull forward. And one more time, exhale, we'll sink back. Feel the fingertips grip into the mat, pull yourself to tabletop. Realign that left knee with your traditional width, and we'll take the right knee out to that exaggerated width, left side roughly in line, Right side asymmetrical as we sink back into child's pose. Inhale, pull yourself forward. Neutral spine. Exhale, sink back into child's pose. Inhale forward. And last time, we'll exhale back into child's pose. Landing here, releasing here, feeling that asymmetry. Fingertips grip into the mat. We'll pull ourselves forward. We'll realign our right leg and just give the hips a little lateral sway. Feel that movement within the hips, the edge of the range of motion, how the lumbar, how the upper and lower half of the body are really integrating. Lumbar sacrum connection. And then eventually we'll bring our tailbone to neutral and we'll extend our legs straight out in front of us. As the legs extend, think about crafting our verticalness in our spine. And let's take a brief forward fold, a little transitionary forward fold before we head onto our backs. We'll be here for another 40 seconds. When it feels appropriate, we'll walk ourselves through a vertical spine, through staff, and straight onto our backs. Land here, let your body relax here. Feel the neutrality beneath you. Feel what we've done already, particularly in this trunk space. And then when it feels appropriate, your choice, you can use the blankets here or not. We're going to go Baddha Sukhasana, bottoms of the feet together, knees fall out wide. We're going to be here for a little bit. So if you know that abductor musculature wants support, benefits from support, tuck those blankets underneath the lateral edge. And we'll settle in here. Tendency for the middle of the lumbar to arch. See if you can relax into neutrality. See if we can be as neutral as is possible here. Throughout the length of the spine. There's this little town tucked away in the mountains. And like every other collection of humans, there are troubles and problems that arise. This particular town is quite lucky. Because it has this man who's become known as the Fixer. Anytime there's a door hinge that creaks or a shingle askew, anytime there's interpersonal conflict, or a wobbly wagon wheel, this man shows up. And he addresses the problem or the problems. And it is these actions that he becomes known for and in many ways identifies with. And it is these actions that have built him a wonderful reputation within the community. When something goes wrong, people know that it's time to reach out to the Fixer, because whatever it is that's wrong, he'll solve it. And that capacity for problem solving has a systemic impact on this little town tucked away in the mountains. Everyone feels just a little bit better, a little bit safer, a little bit more protected, a little bit more cared for, a little bit more loved than they might without this Fixer. We have another 60 seconds here. Check in with your breath and see what it's doing for you, positively or negatively. And just ensure that it's giving you everything you want or need here. When it feels appropriate, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. Let the feet connect with the ground. Feel those femoral heads reintegrating here, and allow for the weight of your body to be really nicely dispersed between that hip point, that sacrum point, and your shoulder girdle. And think about those weight points as you lift the feet and bring the thighs closer to the torso. Hands can clasp here on the hamstrings or the shins or the knees, whatever feels advantageous. They don't have to, but if it feels advantageous. Instead of thinking about this anterior hip crease that we might normally focus on, think about the weight dispersal across the torso. So that the shoulder girdle and the hip girdle are really holding equivalent amounts of that energy. And then we'll relax the feet back down to the mat. And we're going to roll over onto our bellies. Here we are looking for Sphinx. So we'd like a 90-degree bend of the elbow so that the humerus is running vertical, palms down, and then finding a position for the head that helps the lumbar expand. So oftentimes getting into this high head position is going to create extension compression in the low back, lumbar spine. If that's happening, just lower yourself down until you feel an alleviation of that compression and find your way into some ease within the spine. You don't have to be stationary here. You can move your head with your breath if that is advantageous. Be here for about 90 more seconds. Remember to check in with your breath. Ask yourself if it's impacting you in the most beneficial way possible. If it's not, adjust so that it is, so that it's more nourishing, more relaxing, more easing. If at any point the breath feels like it's getting shortened or you can't take a full inhale or exhale, it almost certainly means we're in a physical shape and it's not advantageous for us. So we'll want to lower out of that shape and allow some more room. Last 15 seconds here. And when it feels appropriate, stack your hands, let your forehead come down, and just let your low back be at ease in a little crocodile. Really deep inhales and exhales so that you feel that full capacity for lung inflation and full capacity within the empty lung experience. We'll give ourselves just 15 more seconds here. And then as it feels appropriate for you, we're going to take our right knee out into half frog. So we're looking for kind of roughly a horizontal extension from the hip with the femur. Now that doesn't necessarily mean to be true, right? If it just feels like it's too much, keep that leg lower. Put yourself in a spot where you get some external hip rotation, but your body can be comfortable and you can create relative neutrality across the sacrum. You also have two blankets here. You can slide one or both of those underneath that inner edge of your shin, knee, ankle structure. Totally optional if we use the props or not. Choose what is best for you, and we'll settle into this half frog. Hands can stay stacked. You can twist your head away from the hip towards the left shoulder. You can twist towards the right again, or you can keep your forehead neutral. Whatever feels ideal for you this morning. One foggy morning, the entirety of this town, tucked away in the mountains, comes alive. The town's seer has foretold a huge storm is on the way. And she's right, there is. Almost in unison, the entirety of the town's residents start to request help from the fixer. And as there's only one of him, the requests quickly become chaotic. Starts going from home to home, boarding up windows, fortifying doors. One interesting thing that he does, all the houses tend to face inward towards the center of this town. And they all have little upstairs attic windows. While he's boarding them up, he leaves one little slit so that everyone still has the ability to see out of their fortified homes. But as the winds start to pick up on the forefront of this storm, the requests and the unfulfilled requests especially become louder, more chaotic, more urgent. And the fixer himself begins to move more frantically. Where he's generally jovial, he starts being sharp and barking orders. But no matter how fast he works, it seems like the requests for help continue to expand. Last 30 seconds here. And when it feels appropriate for you, we'll let that right leg come down and mirror the left. Think about balancing the weight distribution across the hip girdle once again. So the right and left side of the ilium really receive an equivalent amount of weight. Think about the lumbar kind of reintegrating with that pelvic bowl so that we create a neutral balance once again. And then when it feels appropriate for you, we'll move over to that second side, the left side. Again, coming out at roughly is doing a lot of work here, right? Roughly straight out from the hip socket. We're just looking for some external rotation. So if your hip is not going all the way out and your leg is a little bit lower, wonderful. We're just looking to find and expand our external hip rotation. So finding that, thinking about getting balance across the sacrum, and then just finding a place where your head can be supportive of the expansion we're seeking here. Feeling your way into your breath. As the fixers list gets longer and longer, and the time to complete these requests before the storm gets shorter and shorter, and the weather becomes worse and worse, the collective attitude of this little town also becomes worse and worse, mirroring that of the weather, of the shortness of time, and of the lack of the capacity of the fixer. And little brief bouts of bickering start to break out as the fixer decides to prioritize one person's project over the other. And then the rains start. And at first, they're just hard, then torrential, then horrific. And with these sheets upon sheets upon sheets of rain falling, the fixer is still running around trying to fortify everyone's home, shouting at people to get inside, barking orders here, prioritizing projects there, and the friction within the community continues to grow. The storm gets worse, so does the friction. People are watching from their little attic windows, little slit that's been left open, and they're seeing the fixer run around in the panic. And it's making them feel more and more anxious about their own situation. Fixers running from one job across the center of town to the other, and everyone's watching him as the rain is just battering him around and the winds are nearly knocking him over. He gets to the center of town and he comes to a dead stop. And the collective hearts of the community kind of jump because they can't imagine why his movement would stop so suddenly. And through the rain, they can barely see, but there's a reason. When you're ready, that left leg's going to come down to mirror the right. And we're once again just going to bring our awareness to this trunk space, to this hip girdle space, balance the weight distribution left to right across the ilium. Feel the lumbar hip integration, the upper and lower half of the body connecting with one another. Feel your full capacity to breathe, the inhale to full lung capacity, the exhale to full emptiness. We'll give ourselves just 20 more seconds here just to absorb what we've done thus far. That's right. When you're ready, we'll roll over onto our backs and re-greet the neutrality of the mat with our spine. Feel this new level of integration possibility with the hip space. Knees can be bent or legs can be extended, whatever feels most impactful for you? Give ourselves 30 more seconds just to feel into this integration. It feels appropriate for you. We'll bring our knees into a bent position if they're not already. Kneecaps point towards the ceiling. We're going to add some dynamic movement, some dynamic rotation with some external rotation. So with an inhale, let's just push down into the feet and hips. So you inhale and you feel that capacity to neutralize. Exhale, we'll let both knees fall to the left. Inhale, we're coming back to neutral. Think about that neutral balance that you created with the first inhale, and then exhale, knees fall out wide, bottoms of the feet together. Inhale, we feel that reintegration. Exhale to the right. Inhale, reintegration. Exhale, knees fall out wide, bottoms of the feet together. Inhale, exhale to the left. Inhale to neutral. Exhale, bottoms of the feet come together, knees fall out wide. Inhale, integrate. Exhale to the right. Inhale, integrate. Exhale, knees fall out wide. Just continue with your breath. Inhales, we integrate at neutral. Exhales, we either fall to the left or right, or we fall to that neutral expansion. Moving with your breath now, so maybe the durations become exaggerated and long. If we fall out of place, we lose our track. That is not a problem. We just start again. Inhales always bringing you together, and exhales are taking you either into rotation or out wide. And let's go through 2 more cycles. 2 more times the knees fall to the left, 2 more times the knees fall to the right, 4 more times the knees fall open. And then we'll meet back at neutral. And so through the rain, everyone begins to see exactly why the fixer has stopped perfectly still in his tracks. Eventually, no rush to make this true, but eventually we're going to meet with the knees pointed towards the ceiling, back in our neutral alignment, and one last time, let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide for a static hold. Now, we've done a lot of external hip rotation here, so it may be advantageous to take those blankets and tuck them under the lateral edges of the thighs, even if that isn't normally what you like to do. Just remember that there's a lot of openness here. And so the reason that the fixer is stopped is because there is an old woman sitting perfectly still on the bench. The rain and the wind are lashing against her. But she's sitting there in perfect stillness. And through these sheets of rain, as everyone's looking through these little slits in their attic window, people begin to see this woman, a woman who's presumably been there the whole time, but no one is focused on her because they've been watching the chaos of the fixer run from house to house to house. The fixer himself starts to bark at this woman, saying, "You need to get inside. You can't be out here in this." She smiles and looks up at him. She says, "You're out here, and I'm doing just fine. You're the one running around like a chicken with your head cut off." And she pats the bench next to her, motions for him to sit down. And after some time frozen in his tracks, he does sit down on the bench next to her. The storm's not any less violent as he sits there. But for a reason he can't necessarily explain, a sense of ease comes over him as he sits down. Just 40 seconds here. When it feels appropriate for you, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. Inhale so that you feel that reintegration once again, and then just ask yourself if there's any movement that you might want, need, or could benefit from prior to Shavasana. And if there is, let's offer that to ourselves right now. Anything that would be advantageous. And then when you are ready for it, when it feels appropriate for you, let's find our way into a shape where we can appreciate stillness. And the fixer certainly wasn't the only one who began to feel this sense of ease as he sat down next to this woman. Everyone who was watching from their homes also noticed a decrease in their stress and their anxiety as they watched these two sit in perfect stillness, even as the chaos of the storm battered against them. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. Your wrists and your ankles, elbows and knees. Feel the breath start to mobilize the torso, shoulders, hips. Eventually, we'll utilize this movement to transition from the shapes we're in. We'll find our way back into a seat, realigning the spine vertically, letting the hips anchor us, the shoulders stack, the eyes close. With our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that often the greatest strength you have is not in how quickly you can react, but in how still you can be in the face of chaos. See how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice, for recharging your body, and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you. Love the heck out of you. I'll be back tomorrow night if you want to move. If not, have a beautiful week. We'll see you soon. Wow.